Let's start with another Trump tweet, if you don't mind, Brad, because he's been hot on the trail of what's happened to Mr. McCabe. He says, "Wow, dossier is bogus," referring to the Trump dossier. Clinton campaign DNC funded dossier. FBI cannot, after all this time, verify claims in dossier of Russia-Trump collusion. FBI tainted, and they use this crooked Hillary pile of garbage as the basis for going after the Trump campaign. Now, that's a mouthful, forgive me, but at the same time, you have Mr. McCabe himself, according to Fox News and some of our targets who were inside that room listening to his testimony, he stood by the Trump dossier. What's going on?
Well, I think the president is right. There's something terribly wrong in the leadership of the FBI, and the dossier is just one part of it. How about the FBI agent, supervisory agent, who has disparaging texts to his girlfriend about the president, the leaking of the dossier, the dumbing down of the Clinton report to prevent her from being indicted? There are terrible, terrible things happening within the leadership, not at the rank and file. And that's why I think you're seeing this supervisor leaving. Because he knows he can't stand the heat by sticking around, and he should have been going long ago. But he's standing
by the dossier, which surprised me. When he was asked to corroborate, by the way, what in the dossier was true, the only thing he came up with was that Carter Page, a Trump worker in the campaign, went to Moscow. That's it. That's the only thing that he could corroborate.
Well, he has no choice. He's got to stick to it. And by the way, he's not going to be held to account unless when he leaves the FBI, he's hauled before Congress again. But he thinks by exiting, he's going to free himself from any further controversy. Right. He may be wrong.
Well, also, he was asked specifically if he knew anything about Hillary Clinton's campaign paying for the Trump dossier. He said no, even though there are documents that have his signature on it that verify that he knew that the Hillary campaign had been paying for it.
That's why there's something very troubling within the leadership of the FBI, and the Congress has the duty, the constitutional authority, to oversee the operations of the executive branch in this regard, and they should be doing it, and they are.
Well, and in fact, the House Intel Committee is going to be talking to Bruce Orr, who, as you might remember, Bruce Orr's wife worked for Fusion GPS, which helped put together the Trump dossier, and now we have word that the FBI's general counsel, James Baker, was the source for Mother Jones' Dave Corn's report on the Trump dossier. Remember, David Corn was one of the first journalists to come out with information about the Trump dossier, and he was getting it directly from the FBI.
Isn't that something? You talk about convenient memories or trying to rewrite reports. The FBI at the senior level has got some real problems. And I think Comey was up to his eyeballs in it, and I think that is exactly why the president let him go.
I want to switch to a sort of related subject, which is Project Cassandra, which Blake Berman was talking about at the White House. In fact, it does appear that there was evidence that the Obama administration pulled law enforcement away from some very interesting research that they were doing on exactly how it was that Hezbollah and Iran were laundering money all around the world in favor of terrorist organizations. That research was pulled back. The rug was pulled out from under the law enforcement agents by the Obama administration because they're worried about the Iran deal. What is the follow-through on that? Will we have new investigations on that?
I think absolutely. This is something that Congress also has to take up and investigate. How is it possible that the president was so desperate to make a deal with Iran that their client, if you will, Hezbollah, that of Iran, the funding source of terrorism, was basically given a free pass? This stinks from the top to the bottom. This is exactly why Congress has to look into it. It should be bipartisan, and people should be held to account.
Will the fact that what happened with Project Cassandra is so troublesome, will that have any effect on the Iran deal? I mean, it's still kind of in effect.
Well, every 6 months this deal is, or every 90 days, excuse me, this deal is going to be looked at. It should be looked at with a fine-tooth comb. The president's right. It's not worth the paper it's written on. And it allows Iran to increase and develop its non-nuclear missiles and armament to terrorist nations. That's separate and apart from the Iranian deal. The Iranian deal should be canceled. I think the president is biding his time, getting the evidence together, and sooner or later they also will be held to account because this deal was not worth it.
Right.
The president was desperate. Apology and appeasement doesn't work, whether it's in North Korea, Iran, or with the Russians.
But you know, Brad, the thing is that the same people that put the Iran deal together are still in the State Department. It's kind of like the deep state in terms of the FBI and the Justice Department. You have the same kind of thing that was going on in the State Department. A lot of those bureaucrats are still around. I wonder if they would actively try to subvert the policies of Donald Trump.
Well, they better not. The president is in charge of the executive branch, and that includes every agency within his direction, and they should have a house cleaning, not only in the State Department, but in the Justice Department, in every department that has gone rogue. And we've seen that happen under the Obama administration. Now you're seeing it as part of the resistance to President Trump.
I'm just wondering how difficult it is to get rid of these people. It's almost impossible to fire a bureaucrat. Can you at least move them away from powers of importance?
Absolutely, and I don't say that it's or I don't believe that it's that hard to get rid of people. Let them take us to court. Let them sue us. Good luck, and we'll provide the proper evidence to show that they too serve at the pleasure of the president. He's in charge of the executive branch.